Hamid Karzai, welcome to Istanbul.
Thank you.
Wonderful to have you on the
Thank
program
you.
again. Tell us why you're here.
I'm here to see some friends and family, and I'll be leaving back tonight.
Now, when we were looking at your schedule over the past few months, you would forgive us for thinking when we saw former President of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai, going to Russia, former President of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai, going to China, former President of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai, coming to Turkey, having meetings. It sounds like a man who's re-injecting himself into the political sphere and maybe who wants to become president of Afghanistan again.
No, I'm not in politics. I'm not re-injecting myself into the political sphere, and I don't want to become the president of Afghanistan again. I've done my time. I did what I could for my country, and I like the new generation of Afghans to come forward and take our country to peace and to the heights of progress and prosperity.
Millions of Afghans support you. If there was a large enough number of Afghans who wanted you to run for the sake of their country, you're a patriot, and said, we want President Karzai back, would you run?
Well, my wish is not to run. My wish is not to become the president of Afghanistan again. I can serve the country in lots of other ways. As a citizen, as in many different ways. But if the Afghan people go and ask that questions, they have that right to ask that question and to seek who they want to have. But as far as I'm concerned, as a citizen of this country, as a one who has been already president for 14 years, 13 years, I wouldn't want it. The Afghan people, of course, are sovereign. They can have their sovereign rights.
But a substantial portion of the country still has majestic, immense respect for you. And they remember your time fondly. Is it naive to think that people are obviously still coming to you and asking you, what shall we do right now? What would you do differently?
I'm glad to know that. Of course, as a person, as an individual, we all want to be liked. And it makes me happy to see that some people like me, but that doesn't mean that I should become the president or that I should turn to the business of government in Afghanistan. Yes, as an Afghan national, as someone with experience in Afghanistan of all types, including 13 years of being in office as the president, the Afghan people would expect me to help when we have difficulties, when we have harder times. And it is also my job as a citizen of the country to do that, because it's our home. And that's where we live. That's where our children are. That's where we want to be. Therefore, every family and the family of Afghans want to be in a good home, in a good country. And that's what we are trying to achieve. And if I can do anything in this regard to further a happy life in Afghanistan, I will do it, and I'll be delighted and honored.
How are you helping right now?
I'm working hard together with the rest of the Afghan people, by trying to reach our aspirations. Our aspirations are peace, prosperity, a sovereign Afghanistan, where we don't depend on foreigners, where the American troops aren't there, where we don't need to be looking to outsiders for support, where we can make, create, and earn our own, where we can have a better life, a peaceful life, where we can be as peaceful as here, happily in Istanbul, as a nation, as a society, as a country. That's an aspiration, that's a human aspiration. And we need that as a people. We also deserve that as a people. That's what I'm hoping to be useful towards.
You say a sovereign Afghanistan without American troops in Afghanistan. It appears as if General Mattis has been given the go-ahead by President Trump to develop a new Afghanistan strategy. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was just in Afghanistan. They seem to want another troop surge to take the American troops from about 8,400 to over 10,000. They want to inject a few more thousand American troops. It sounds reasonable, doesn't it? I mean, bombs are blowing up in Kabul, in Helmand, all over the place.
When the Americans came in after September 11, many, a great majority of the Afghan people welcomed them. And we joined hands with them. And that brought the immediate success that we had. And in certain areas, and the improvement of the economy, and the improvement of education, of all sorts of improvements in our life, the Americans, our neighbors, the rest of the world joined hands, and we were successful, and we are thankful for that. But the fundamental area, which was the reason for the US to come to Afghanistan after September 11, the fight against extremism and terrorism and bringing security to Afghanistan, the American enterprise, the American action failed. Failed because, in our view, of the mistakes that they made. They ignored the sanctuaries outside of Afghanistan, beyond Afghanistan. They attacked Afghan villages. They attacked Afghan people. They created prisons in Afghanistan. They did all sorts of wrong in Afghanistan, which led to their failure. Today, Afghanistan is much less secure, much more in trouble in terms of lack of security than you could have ever imagined. And in the presence of the US forces in Afghanistan, extremism increased, violence increased. Even Daesh emerged under their wings, under the wings of the Americans in Afghanistan, of their presence in Afghanistan. So I don't believe that any increase in US troops in Afghanistan is going to help end violence. They were there, violence kept increasing. No, it is the US strategy that should change. It is the US thinking, if they are sincere in fighting extremism. I must underline this.
You think they're not sincere?
No, I don't think at all. If they are sincere in fighting extremism, if that's really the reason they have come to Afghanistan for, then they must change their strategy.
They bombed and killed more than 90 Daesh fighters in Nangarhar very recently. Doesn't that show sincerity?
That does not. That shows the opposite. They came to test their bomb. Why would they use on a cave that had no people in it, even if they killed 90 people? That doesn't give them the right to come and use the biggest of their nuclear bomb on Afghanistan. They call it the mother of all bombs. We don't like to call it the mother of all bombs. Mother is a very kind being. Mm-hmm. Mother gives life. It doesn't take life away. And the Americans call it, not the American people, the American government. So let's call it the biggest non-nuclear bomb or the deadliest non-nuclear bomb. They, in my view, used it to test it, and which is wrong. They cannot use a bomb against a country that they call ally. And it didn't help because within a few weeks, Daesh was expanding and they took the mountains of Tora Bora. So obviously, even if that was the purpose, even if they genuinely wanted to destroy Daesh, it didn't help. Therefore, the military action, bombs, detonating bombs, arresting people, creating prisons, interfering in our country, in our democracy, in our way of life, will not help them advance any cause of theirs. They better not send more troops. They better sit down with the Afghan people for a new compact on the manner of their prisons, on the conduct of their prisons, and they better also very much sit down with the global powers and the countries in the region to recreate an environment of cooperation rather than one of confrontation, which is what we have now, unfortunately. I mean, Russia, China, Iran, even Pakistan. The Americans should sit down with and have a cooperative environment rather than one of competition, and especially where they use Afghanistan as the ground for that competition. That is hurtful to us, and we don't want it.
The great game.
The return of great game, in a way, yes.
When I read your comments on Daesh and America, where you said that you make no distinction between Daesh and America, I thought you were misquoted. That was the Voice of America in April.
I wasn't misquoted, no. That's what I
can
felt.
You genuinely tell me, morally, in terms of intention, in terms of the very kind of organizational structure and chain of command and how attacks happen, how politics plays out, can you genuinely tell me there's no difference between Daesh and America?
Extremism, including Daesh, some increased under the US presidency of Afghanistan, during the US presidency of Afghanistan, some were created in Afghanistan, in the US presidency, during the US presidency. Daesh was created there. When it arrived, it brutally went into villages, killed people, hurt our identity, tried to destroy our identity, drove people away from their homes. They committed unbelievable atrocity against the Afghan people. The US was there. Daesh emerged first in Nangarhar, in Shinwar district of Nangarhar. The United States has a huge base in Jalalabad, in the central provincial capital of Nangarhar. They kept watching it, while the Afghan people kept coming to us and complaining of how Daesh was behaving and doing things.
So they knew, but they did nothing.
They not only knew, they watched.
At what point does watching become supporting?
And from the very beginning, when you are there with the intention to fight it, but then a deadly terroristic organization like that emerges, and you watch it and do nothing. In addition to that, more than that, people reported that helicopters were coming and dropping supplies and
to
bringing
Daesh.
to those groups emerging there. Yes, so it's the Afghan people that saw all that activity, neglect and support both.
So Americans dropped supplies to Daesh?
They didn't say the Americans supplied to Daesh. They said helicopters came. Now,
who do you think
now that's the
had
question.
those helicopters?
That's the question. Our airspace is in American hands. They have the radar, they have the airplanes, they have the entire airspace. We don't own our airspace. The Americans own the airspace. So if helicopters were coming, I'm sure the American radar saw whose helicopters, from where they came. And if they allowed those, if they were non-NATO, non-American helicopters, it belonged to someone. How come the US allowed it? And if they didn't stop it, that means they allowed it and they supported it. So they cannot tell the Afghan people that they didn't know. The airspace is in their hands, the communication is in their hands, the area is under their complete, absolute surveillance. There is no way that they can excuse themselves or offer excuses in this regard. No, we don't believe it, and they are to blame.
To an American who would watch this and say, we sacrificed thousands of our soldiers
Sorry for
to
that.
defend Afghanistan
Yes.
and to bring about a semblance of democracy to this shaky country. We helped bring you, Mr. Karzai, to the
Yes.
presidency,
Yes.
and now you're saying we're just like ISIS. How dare you?
Yes, well, I dare very much, because I'm right. They came, they supported us, we welcomed them. A doctor comes to you and says, I want to treat you. And then he gives you the wrong medicine. Do you continue with him? You don't. He gives you the wrong treatment, or he hurts you further. You don't. We are grateful to the American people for their taxpayers' money. They are great people. They have helped Afghanistan in many ways. We are very, very grateful. We commiserate with the American families who have lost their children, their young men and women, very much. They're not to blame. They've sacrificed. It is the American government and their policy that I stand against. Not the American people, not their help to Afghanistan, where it has been effective. We are grateful for that. It's the US government and their policies in Afghanistan that are counterproductive. Democracy was our own doing, not the American doing. We went and voted them. The Afghan people wanted it. The US government interfered in our democracy. Look at the mess we have today.
Was there a moment for you when it changed? You were an ally.
Yes.
And then you're not now.
There was a moment. There was a moment when they began to cause civilian casualties, and when they ignored the sanctuaries beyond Afghanistan in our neighbors in Pakistan. And we kept telling them repeatedly that there are sanctuaries, that they are being trained and sent against us. They ignored it. And they kept bombing the Afghan people, causing civilian casualties, massive civilian casualties to our people. Initially, I would very respectfully, behind closed doors, tell them that that's wrong. Don't do that. Don't ignore the sanctuaries in Pakistan and stop killing our people. They would just not listen to us. They would consider as if we didn't matter as a nation, as a people. After a year of quietly telling them to change their behavior, to change their politics, to change their policies in Afghanistan, then I had to start publicly to speak and to criticize them and to go against them. And that was in 2005. By July of 2006, I had publicly started speaking and complaining against what they did. Not that we were against the American people or that we had an ideological difference, no. But against what they were doing, the US government's policies in Afghanistan.
I asked you at the end of last year, just before the US election, Trump or Clinton, you were on the fence. Now, with half a year of which to judge Donald Trump, are you a fan or not?
Well, I'm not a fan of anybody. A year ago, when you asked me, I did not want to interfere in US elections. I do not want to do in America what the American government did in Afghanistan, interfering in our elections. It's the choice of the American people. President Trump is now the US president. I wish him the best in serving America and also in doing the right thing in Afghanistan and elsewhere.
Pakistan, May 31st, massive bomb in Kabul, huge. I mean, I think the final death toll was more than 150, if I'm not mistaken.
Sad.
At least 400 injured. Horrendous attack on the people of Afghanistan. The Afghan Interior Ministry very quickly said this was the work of the Haqqani Network, sponsored by Pakistan's ISI. Basically saying Pakistan did this to us. Do you believe that?
I'm in no position to immediately say yes, it is true, or no, it isn't. We have bombs in Afghanistan. We've had a lot of terrorist activity conducted from the Pakistani territory against us, no doubt. We've had a lot of violence committed against us in Afghanistan by terrorist groups who were raised in Pakistan, trained in Pakistan, sent to Afghanistan. Tremendous atrocity has been done from that territory against the Afghan people and from those institutions in Pakistan against the Afghan people. The Pakistani people are the closest to the Afghan people of all people.
But is their government supporting terrorism against?
They've helped us tremendously. But I also know that everything that happens in Afghanistan is not done by Pakistan. There's a lot of violence committed from Pakistani territory against Afghanistan, but not every violence, not all the violence. On this bomb, I don't know.
But in general, is Pakistan supporting terrorism?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Supporting extremism, supporting terrorism, it has been a tool in their hands for a long time, and it's been a tool together with the Americans for a long time in their hands. They've been bedfellows in the support of extremism and violence, right from the time of our struggle against the Soviets to today.
So we talk of these bombs. We talk of a lack of stability even in the so-called green zone of Kabul. Daesh with a presence in the country.
That's what's wrong. That's what's seriously wrong. From a country that became totally peaceful,
right,
where every Afghan began to work hard for a better life, a new life in Afghanistan, where the Afghan people all got together and united and went to parliaments and went to elections and did all the right things, to where we are now talking of green zones. Green zone means protect some,
Right.
leave the rest to bombs.
And even those aren't protected.
Well, I'm talking of the intention here.
Right, certainly.
To protect some, well, that's wrong.
Of course it's wrong.
It's criminal.
Of course.
It's criminal to try to cordon off ourselves and let the rest of the country to do bombs and violence.
It's military occupation talk, right? It's wrong. So
exactly.
even, okay, so let me finish my
Protect the
question.
embassies,
Sure.
protect the foreign bases, let the Afghans die. That's what it means.
So yeah, to finish my question, even that, it's disgusting to talk like that, right? But it's military occupation talk. It's the reality in the sense that the country is not as stable as people would have wished. Maybe it's even worse than it was, post-2001.
Yes.
So even the so-called green zones being attacked by massive bombs.
Yes.
Daesh, the Taliban controlling 60% of Helmand province. 60%.
Probably more.
Probably more. A quarter of the whole country. Is it all President Ghani's fault?
No, not at all. It's not. Well, they have their problems, they have their issues that one can raise, but I'm not going to talk about that publicly.
Why not?
Well, I'm the former president of the country. My job is to do all to secure and to do better and to bring stability to Afghanistan. Talking about our government in public or on an international channel doesn't serve that purpose, so I wouldn't do that. But it is not entirely the fault of the Afghan government. Yeah, we have issues there as well. It's the entire circumstances of the country. It's the way the US has behaved, it's the way the neighbors have behaved, it's the way Pakistan has behaved, it's the way the US worked towards issues of their interest that caused the suspicion of our neighbors. It's the lack of, in short, when the US came initially, Afghanistan became a place of cooperation between the Afghans and the Americans, and between the Afghans and the Americans and our neighbors and the global powers. That isn't there anymore. That environment of cooperation has broken down. Suspicion has arrived. Suspicion by the Russians of the American activity in Afghanistan, on which the Russians are right. I very much understand their point of view and I agree with them. By the Chinese, I agree with them. By the Iranians, our neighbors, I agree with them. So the United States must go back to getting the trust and confidence of our neighbors and of major powers in Afghanistan, where they are assured that Afghanistan is not used as a platform against them. Right now, nobody is sure of that. And also to the Afghan people, that Afghanistan is not used so violently at the cost of the Afghan people advancing America's agenda in the global, power game.
Sir, do you believe that the United States interfered to get Ashraf Ghani elected as president?
Well, the U.S. interfered in the election. The U.S. interfered in 2009 in elections when I was a candidate. They then, too, blamed our election of being fraudulent, and through doing that, using their media, the BBC, the CNN, and all of that, and their newspapers.
But you won that time, so.
Yes, but I won in spite of them trying to force me to agree to the office of the chief executive, in spite of them trying to weaken my win, because I did not agree to what they were asking me to do. So they did all of that. They did exactly the same thing in 2014. So 2014 is the repetition of 2009. In 2009, they failed to achieve what they wanted. In 2014, they got what they wanted. That's as far as I can talk about the elections.
My final question to you. You support talks with the Taliban.
Absolutely.
Because you consider them sons of the soil,
Absolutely.
your words, right?
Absolutely.
And Daesh are not sons of the soil.
Not at all, not at all, yes.
But when we look at the example of other sons of the soil, and even when we see, for example, Gulbuddin Hekmatyar's group, there's a kind of peace process. He committed crimes in the past. He comes back into the fold. a spirit of amnesty, brotherhood, forgiveness. But even then, with all of that, his Hizb Islami fighters still don't want to give up their weapons. Isn't that an example of what might happen? A small example.
They should give up their weapons. Mr. Hekmatyar is welcome to Afghanistan together with his colleagues. Welcome to participate in strengthening peace in Afghanistan, bringing total peace to Afghanistan, and in democratic politics of the country. They have all the rights as all other citizens of Afghanistan. But that cannot be done with guns. They must give up their guns if they still have any guns with them. Everybody should do that. The guns should be only held by the Afghan police and the Afghan army. One for the protection of the country, the army, the other for law and order in the country. So that is clearly the rule, and that should happen.
If they don't want to give up their guns, what's the likelihood of the Taliban giving up their guns?
Everybody should. If they are Afghans, if they have Afghan interest in mind, they should. Holding a gun is working for someone else. They shouldn't.
Hamid Karzai, pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Good to talk to you. Good to talk to you. Lovely, lovely. Good conversation.